I'm Rose Surma. I live in Little Falls, and I'm with Oasis Central Minnesota. Thank you, Kathy, for talking about some of the collaborative work we're doing. Our organization has been in the community for decades. Actually, I think it was 1989 that we got our tax exempt status, so this is our 30-year anniversary. We've had a history working with housing and homeless, and more recently we've been more active in that area. We're a small organization, but we're growing to serve more of the housing need. This past year, we served more than 100 individuals that did not have housing. 57% of those were minor children. So most of these individuals that are affected by this crisis are minor children. And they really deserve safety and dignity and the ability to grow healthy. I'm trying to look here. It is a community. We need community support and community collaboration, so I appreciate that being said, and Ron, what you brought up about our organization. I'm also happy to hear that a lot of the other issues that intersect with homelessness are a priority for you. Issues like addiction, mental health, daycare, childcare, transportation, and also schools. Those are all really important things in our community. Trying to think of what more to say. That's about all I have to say. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for your support of our community and organization.
She did great. Okay. I know when to go out on a high note.
Good morning. I'm RaquelLundberg, and I'm on the Little Falls City Council. Thank you, Senator Gazelka and Representative Kreischer, for being here today. As you know, we've been talking about putting a bridge over the river and over the tracks. So the river is not what divides Little Falls east and west. It's the railroad tracks. This winter, my husband and I pulled up, crossed the river. We were on the bridge. The train was there, so we were stopped on the bridge waiting for the train to go by, and a fire truck pulled up next to us with its lights on, and it had to stop. And I looked at my watch, and it was 1 minute and 45 seconds before the train went by and the fire truck could get to the emergency. A life could have been saved in that time. So I'm just wondering where we are in getting funding. If you could update us on getting funding. We need an additional $20 million to have that bridge go over the tracks. Are you helping us with that? Where are we at?
So we're both interested. It competes, every project competes with all the communities. I think last year there was something like, I think it was $4 billion of requests, and just in round numbers, $1 billion got funded. And so it's important to start the process if you expect to have a project get funded. And so just the number of projects that I've worked on that they didn't start in the first or second, they got done in the fourth or the sixth or the 10th year. I mean, it just takes time to convince enough legislators that your project deserves to be paid. And that's what we work on, but that's the short answer.
So how do we convince them? Us as a community, how do we convince? You're convinced, how do we convince everyone else?
So that's not how it works. Let me put it to you this way.
It's up to you to convince them, right?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
In some of those backroom deals that we did, and in the bills we put, and Senator Gazelka's being very modest, we worked the deal out. We had this money last year. We had the infrastructure, we had done this, and it was vetoed. And in fact, in a very creative way, it was moved, and I'm just going to be honest, I know Paul's going to be more humble about this, but I remember we were having a conversation in the hallway, we were bringing the transportation chair, I was working in the House, he was working in the Senate, and we figured out a way, and actually Paul had figured out a way that we could use some transportation dollars to move this. So it's a matter of getting to a solution. Now, I would love to say that we can go down and meet with 81 legislators in the House and say, let's get this done. But now we're on a reset. We had an opportunity, that door has been closed. Now we're back to square one. I have to build in my majority a whole coalition to get this into that bill. And I'll tell you, it's going to be harder because the minority has shifted to the majority, who all has projects. I was in the majority, I had projects. So now I'm competing against them, and that's just the way it works. So I hear the urgency. Don't think for a minute we're not trying to figure out solutions. The reality is the sands have shifted, and now I wish I had the power to go convince people that I have my ideas and they're the right ones, but that's changed in the House. So the best that I can tell you is, we're going to keep working on these. At least I will in the House. You have my commitment. I know Paul has been very vested in our area. So we look for those opportunities. I guess that's the best I can tell you. I mean, letters to the governor, squeaky wheel gets oil. So if you can convince the governor, and I have nothing despairing to say about him, see, if you can get the governor on board, our jobs are really easy. So that's where I would take you next.
I'll underline that one. If you're a prominent Democrat or no prominent Democrats, I'm always trying to connect and build relationships. And Ron is exactly right. If the governor engages as well, then it just goes up the line.
GregSpofford, serving this year as an AmeriCorps Vista with Oasis Central Minnesota. I was going to show you that I could not say anything, but on behalf of the people that Rose and Kathy Lane, we're looking forward to a potential partnership. I would say, first of all, thank you to you who are giving us an update and listening so very keenly. I would also like to thank our community, because our community does rally, and even although the challenge increases, our community does rally, and especially for the homeless, a passion, those who are dealing with all those related issues that rose. I just want to offer a success story in our smaller venture right now. There's a gentleman right now who was a concern here and in St. Cloud when he lived down there initially. But once given the opportunity to no longer be homeless, no longer be cold, and in need of some mental health medication that is not addicting, but assists with his mental health, he is giving back. He's volunteering with us. We also have a family that we just were struggling to find a place for. And darned if somebody, offered a house. Dad is no longer able to live at home, living at a long-term care facility, which, boy, watching for our seniors, all the issues that came up today, really important. But then that family was able to offer that house, and we have a mom and 4 kids. Kids are back in school. They had to leave the community for a while, weren't doing well in another community, and they're successful right now. Yes, there's more issues. Yes, we need to walk with them a little bit. But when we do, oh my gosh. I think that's all that has to be said. Just thank you, and keep it up, right?
I think you get to be our last question.
I'm Warren Morey from Motley. It's way on the north end of Morris County.
Nice this time of year.
Anyhow, I just have a couple of questions for clarification. The pipeline was brought up with our first speaker, and I'm curious, does the governor have the last say on that, or do you gentlemen have something to say about how that turns out? That would be one question I have.
Let me answer that one right away, Ben. The governor could have made a decision to not further it in the courts, but he chose to continue that. Now it really is a court decision. I think most people feel like the courts will uphold the lower court, and that delays the process. So that's the best case scenario, but it is a court. It's a separate branch, and they could actually in some way defeat it. And so time will tell now.
And then moving north, what about the mines? Are we through the courts there, or we got to go to more courts up with the mines?
I know that Polymet made the last hurdle. Twin Metals is on the north side of the Laurentian Divide, and so there's another issue as far as where the water flows. So I would expect more in the process yet.
So another 10 years, or? or could be?
I don't think it'll be, for Polymed, I expect it to be within a year that they actually are mining. But Twin Metals, it could be a long time.
The third thing I would like to say is I applaud you for your stance on pot, and I hope that you can continue to be strong in that issue. Medical marijuana, I think, is okay, but I sure don't think we need recreational. And then I think I have shared with you gentlemen before, the nurse staffing issue, I think, is to be taken care of at local hospitals, not with the government. I really appreciate your efforts. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, and Lauren, just a couple things, the nurse staffing thing, and Lauren, by the way, if you don't know, has been a tremendous supporter of medical care facilities, especially up in your area, and thank you for that, because that rural access to medicine is important. But the one thing I'll say on the nurse staffing is absolutely, that has to be handled at the local levels, it's a management labor decision, and more importantly, if we, and remember, I say this often, when we get involved as legislators, we mess it up. That's just what happens. When it gets to our level, it means it's risen to a level where we're gonna make it wrong for somebody. And nurse staffing, if we make that decision, I can tell you who's gonna get hurt the most. It's the long-term care facilities, because we're gonna suck all the RNs and those nurses right out of there, and our long-term care facilities are gonna suffer the most. So I'm very sensitive to that one, so thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for all your work in helping Motley. I mean, over the years, it's amazing.
So can I make closing arguments and address pot?
Yes, you may.
I love, frankly, that was the last question, because almost everywhere I go with media, it's the first question they ask me. And I just want to tell you that medical marijuana is separate from the issue I'm talking about here, recreational marijuana. I've looked at a lot of data now. Some people ask me, well, is it now or later? And for me personally, it's never. That's where I think we ought to end up. We've seen data from other states. Accidents are up 6%, homelessness rates are up, depression among youth is up. Everywhere you turn, there's a bad statistic that comes out for it. What are we going to do about drug testing and people that work? You know, and there's so many areas where it's not going to be good for our culture. And I'm going to be a no. I'm going to give it a hearing. I'm going to let people discuss it, debate it. But my belief is that the Senate will kill that bill.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on, and one of the things I must say that, you know, serving with Senator Gazelka, and it's been a while now. Yeah, and Paul is very principled as a senator, but he also does meet with people, and we've worked through some issues. In fact, we've gotten to some spots that I didn't think we were going to get to, and a lot of that is his leadership, so I'll echo that. And I just want to come off on the legalization of marijuana, and I hear the arguments, and I don't know if there's anybody here that I get some emails, but there are many people that say, hey, you know, it is just like alcohol. And, I do think the penalties could maybe be reduced. I think we're putting some people into jail for infractions that we shouldn't, and that I would be open to looking at. However, if we're going after big pharma and we're going after big tobacco, why would we give them both another product? Because that's really what would happen. On one hand, we're saying, hey, let's cut the smoking and let's cut the pharmaceuticals, but yet we're giving them more access to a product to sell to our kids. That's a problem for me. The other side, and maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but if I look at the opioids and I look at the way chronic inebriation and addiction works, this is just one more avenue that we're giving folks that have really serious problems. You look at Denver, I've looked at the Denver stats, and I look at the social services. Child protection is very important to me. The cases didn't go down, they go up, because you have parents that are struggling, and that if you're under the influence, you can't take care of the kids at the same time. Those kids have to go somewhere. He mentioned under the influence of driving goes up. So I just do not see any compelling reason why we should add this as one more thing to deal with in all the things that we're trying to do. So I get the libertarian argument. I get where people are asking, just saying, hey, you know what, I'm in my home, I'm doing this, and I'm not hurting anybody. And I listen to that, but on the other hand, I have a son who's in the Air Force who reminds me, Dad, I have to be tested for drugs once a month. And in Alaska, marijuana is legal. and I've decided there's just other ways that I can find funds. So I think if it's good for our military, it's probably not a bad practice to put across the board.
Okay, great. Well, with that, we will wrap up today. We want to thank Mark from Great TV for filming for rebroadcast on our local cable access. We want to thank our elected officials. We appreciate you being here. I know Senator Gazilka needs to hit the door running. Perhaps Ron will be here for a few questions afterwards if you didn't get a chance to talk to them. But thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your questions. And remember to keep in contact with your elected officials. They can only represent you if they know your issues. Thank you.